You know the story. A girl in a red hood walks through the woods to her grandmother's house, meets a wolf, is swallowed whole, and is saved by a passing hunter. It reads like a warning about strangers and obedience, an innocent fairy tale to tuck children in at night, but that tidy version is a gloss. The wolf is not simply a beast. The red hood is not simply a color. The story you grew up with is a sanitized map of much older, far darker realities, of predators, of legal violence, of sexual threat, and of societies that use stories to explain and control real terror. Picture Paris in 1697. A gentleman in a wig, Charles Perrault, writes down a version of Le Petit Chaperon Rouge and prints it in Histoire, ou Conte, du temps passé. Perrault's text ends without rescue. The girl is eaten, and that is the lesson. Court records from other centuries show why. In the winter of 1573, in Dole, France, the trial records of Gilles Garnier, nicknamed the Werewolf of Dole, describe a man accused of creeping up on children, devouring them, and being seen as a wolf by terrified villagers. A confession in those documents speaks of the scent of blood, the torn clothing, the missing children. Perrault's moral, no happy ending, reads like a cultural response to real bodies gone missing in the French countryside. But it gets darker. The wolf dressed as grandmother, the wolf in bed, is not just a moment of disguise. It is a parable about men who hide behind intimacy and trust to harm. Picture Bedburg, Germany, in 1589. The court papers from Peter Stump's trial, preserved in pamphlets and later cited by historians, record grisly testimony. Stump accused of nightly assaults, of bringing women to his house, of cannibalism. Officials describe his wolf skin and then move quickly to describe a man who used domestic authority to violate. The wolf in the nightcap is a shorthand for a very human practice. A predator who arrives inside a household. The tale's masquerade encodes warnings about domestic danger long before police records existed. Look at the red hood itself. In Perrault's 1697 telling, the color is a marker, but in older folk variants, the hood often denotes an adult woman's sexual maturity, or, in urban contexts, a registered prostitute's cap. In the 18th century, municipal registers in Paris and London list requirements for women in certain trades to wear colored caps as a form of identification. Red, in particular, becomes associated with blood and with public women. Children hear red and imagine apples and roses. Adults heard a different signal. A young woman exposed to male attention on isolated roads. Here's what's truly horrifying. The red hood marks vulnerability and availability in a world where law and protection are unreliable. The path through the wood is more than scenery. Medieval tax rolls and royal forest ordinances from the 14th through 17th centuries show that forests were lawless borderlands. Picture a winter forest in Lorraine in 1595. The air is cold and bitter. Wolves howl at the tree line, and a shepherd counts missing lambs. Nicolas Remy, magistrate in Lorraine, publishes De Monolatria Libri Tres in 1595 and details werewolf narratives as legal material, pointing to a world in which forest paths are sites of frequent fear. Villagers knew the risks. Bandits, rogue soldiers billeted away from garrison towns, and actual wolves. The fairy tale compresses all of that into a single, deadly path. The basket of goodies is not quaint. It is a vector for control. In Perrault's tale, and in many oral variants, the basket's contents, cakes, wine, food, are offered as gifts, but also as pretexts for women to travel alone, to enter spaces controlled by men. In 17th century Europe, municipal records from Lyon and Augsburg record women traveling with baskets to market and sometimes not returning. The legal minutes describe robberies and assaults on women on the road in startling specificity. The tale obliquely teaches that a solitary woman with provisions will attract violence. The story encodes itinerant danger and the shrinking of public space for females. Then the hunter arrives, sometimes a woodcutter, sometimes a huntsman, slicing open the wolf, freeing the girl and grandmother. That rescue is not universal. Perrault leaves it out. The Grimms add it. The brothers Grimm include a rescuer in their Kinder- und Hausmärchen, first published in 1812 and revised through 1857, reflecting an era eager to rewrite moral endings. But the rescue also maps onto a real history of violent solutions. Professional hunters and bounty men were paid in the 17th and 18th centuries to track predators, literal wolves, and vigilante groups often rescued villages by hanging suspected thieves and alleged witches. The official record from the Duchy of Württemberg, 1670, lists payments to wolf hunters alongside lists of men executed for banditry. The story gives you deliverance, but historical deliverance is often a ledger of executions and state violence. Here's where the escalation sharpens into institutional terror. In the late 16th century, werewolf panics function as a legal mechanism to externalize social anxieties. The Dole archives for the Garnier case record children missing for weeks, adult witnesses alleging suspicious spray of blood, and a public appetite for ritualized punishment. Peter Stump's Bedburg pamphlets, blazoned with woodcuts and date-stamped 1589, circulated across Europe, turning a local horror into a continent-wide moral panic. Nicholas Remy's 1595 book catalogues over 1,000 cases in which accusations of lycanthropy justified torture and execution. The wolf in the tale is not only a predator, it is a legal placeholder for the kinds of crimes societies could not otherwise adjudicate or explain. Communities turned fear into trials, and trials into spectacle. And the final revelation, the fairy, tale's morality, be cautious, be obedient, functions as social conditioning. In urban parish records from London, 1660-1700, lists of runaway girls and missing apprentices are bordered by notes about danger on the highways. Charitable Society's minutes from Amsterdam, 1711, plead for better watchmen in the streets to prevent assaults. The story of a child warned to stay on the path is a story of shrinking public protections. The tale reassures by teaching compliance and silence. Children learn to fear the wolf, but adults learn to accept a world in which predators are normalized and then mythologized. Picture again a small village square in 1589 as a pamphlet seller unfurls a broadsheet proclaiming a werewolf confession. The smell of animal fat from cooking fires hangs in the air. Torches sputter. Villagers speak in low, urgent tones as a child points at a dark road. You can feel how stories and courtrooms and woodcuts feed one another, how a missing child becomes a pamphlet becomes a trial, and a trial becomes a moral tale for generations. This is not to say the wolf was always a man, or that every wolf story is a document of evil. But when you trace Little Red Riding Hood across Perrault's 1697 ink, the Grimm's 1812 volumes and later 1857 revisions, through the Dole court record of 1573, the Bedburg 1589 pamphlets, and the pages of Nicholas Remy in 1595, a pattern emerges. These tales are not whimsical. They are cultural triage, trying to explain theft, assault, and disappearance in terms people could understand. They map social failures, inadequate policing, predatory men, failed justice systems, and public appetite for sensational culpability. When you next hear the story, Red Cloak, Forest, Hungry Wolf, you cannot unknow the layers beneath it. Children see a monster. Historians see a map of fear and regulatory power. The sanitized bedtime version erases blood, trial, and the tangible records of loss. The truth is harsher. The tales serve to teach caution in a world where wolves and men stalk the same paths, where courts sometimes punished scapegoats, and where communities learned to narrate horror so they could live with it. Keep the image of that wolf in your head next time you hear the lullaby cadence. The story is no longer just about a wolf in the wood. It is a mirror held up to the way societies hide their own predators behind myth.